The government could be open to compromises with rebel Tory MPs unhappy with Rishi Sunak's Rwanda legislation. That's according to the new legal migration minister.
I wonder what compromises that might look like. Downing Street says they wouldn't preempt any deals ahead of the debate next week.
It comes as it's been revealed that the cost of the Rwanda scheme has soared to £250 million so far. That's before any flights have even taken off.
Or 240.
Did I say 40?
£1 million.
Did I not say 40?
No, you said 50.
Did I?
It's quite all right. In
Gosh,
the last
it's the end
hour,
of the week,
it
isn't
could
it?
be 250 by now, to be fair. In the last hour, Downing Street has confirmed the extra £100 million was signed off by the former Home Secretary, Suella Braverman.
Well, immigration lawyer Harjap Singh Banghal joins us now to discuss Sunak's fresh bill further. Thank you so much for making the time for us this afternoon. Rishi Sunak believes that this bill can override the courts, can get those planes off the ground. What's your professional view?
Well, technically, he's not wrong. He can, because the bill gives ultimate power to the minister. So even if there's a challenge in the European courts, if the minister says, Home Office minister says, you know what, I'm going to ignore all of this, then he's well within the rights under the bill to do that. However, where that leaves us in relations with, on the international scale, with our neighbours, cooperation, that might be a totally different ballgame altogether. And whether Rishi Sunak wants to do that is something he needs to sit down and discuss. But technically, he's right. He can circumnavigate this, and the bill does give him the power to do that. How many times will they do that? Will it be worth doing it for the sake of sending 300-400 odd people over to Rwanda? What are we going to do about the other 49,500 that are coming across the channel every year? It all waits to be seen.
Well, of course, he would argue that this will prevent further crossings because it will have that deterrent effect. It's interesting you say that this bill can, in theory, get around those various legal challenges because Suella Braverman and Robert Jenrick, who was the immigration minister up till 2 days ago, don't agree. They think that this will continue on with all these this merry-go-round, they call it, of legal challenges, and it won't be successful.
Well, ultimately, it can be successful. Now, the key is how quickly can it be successful? So we could be facing an election in January, May or November. These are the key dates, or even January 2025. Will we get a flight off to Rwanda before them dates? That seems highly unlikely. If we had 4 years to do this, then perhaps Rishi Sunak could have done this. But now it's almost like a race against time, whether they can do that quickly or not. But ultimately, Suella Braverman's success, she couldn't even get anything past the Supreme Court. So I think we'll take that with a pinch of salt as to what she says.
So what are the actual roadblocks here? I suppose, firstly, we've got this vote on Tuesday in the House of Commons. If that passes, then it goes to the House of Lords. That could be a difficult and perhaps laborious process. But once it's passed both the Commons and the Lords, if it does pass both of those contentious chambers, what would be the timeline for any legal frustrations?
The timeline would be that, listen, no one can prevent an appeal being lodged to Europe. So that's the first thing. An appeal will be heard and Europe can pass a judgment on it. Now, this is what I said earlier, that the UK government can decide, well, actually, we're going to ignore that. And we thank you for your advice, but we're still going to go ahead with it. The other thing which is now coming out in the detail is the fact that there's a clause in there which says that if Rwanda or refuse somebody asylum, if somebody's refused asylum, then they'll be sent back to the UK. So you might end up, out of 300 people, 10 people Rwanda decides to give asylum to, and 290 being sent back to the UK.
Yeah.
And the UK would have to accept them. So this is what it just seems futile about. We're not. The dream wasn't it, Suella's, that we're going to send 50,000 people a year to Rwanda? That's never going to happen. It was never achievable. One flight deterrent is not going to deter people who are sitting on the channel. Your program the other night, Patrick's program, proved that. I mean, there were people out there who were laughing and saying, even if you send a flight to Rwanda, it doesn't matter. You can't send 50,000
And of
back,
course,
you don't
there
have
are,
the capacity.
and of course, as Mark White has highlighted, there are many other routes people can take, not least getting in the back of lorries to cross over. Now, you're an immigration lawyer, and I wonder if I can ask you about something slightly different. Sorry to put you on the spot, but of course, there were a package of measures announced on legal migration this week too. And I've been seeing quite a lot from immigration lawyers and people in the know talking about these changes to spousal visas. This has become very controversial, that you can't bring over your spouse, your fiancé, your wife, husband from another country unless you earn £38,700. Now, people have been talking about how there might be ways around this. What sort of ways around this could there be for people who still want to bring a spouse?
Well, the ways around it would be to earn over 38,700 or show excessive savings of over 120,000. And you must have held them for 6 months. The system is the same as it is now. It's just that the limits are going up. So the limits are going up more than they've doubled. So currently it's 18,600, which people, believe it or not, have trouble trying to earn. But to more than double it to 38,700, that is really sort of a tough ask, considering that junior doctors only get paid 32,000, and the average UK wage is much less than 38,700. So that's almost like punishing British citizens.
Harjap,
it's punishing British citizens.
Do you think it's a disproportionate measure then? I guess the argument would be from the government that there needs to be a limit. Other countries do have limits, and if you're coming to this country, you need to be able to provide for yourself.
Yeah, but you could provide for yourself on 35,000. How are junior doctors providing for themselves on 32,500? How are people possibly working at GB News getting 30,000 on the production team providing for theirs? I mean, it's a simple sort of question, really. It's the 38,700. That is unduly harsh. And why punish British citizens? I mean, these people who are coming married to British citizens, they're not coming illegally. They're not coming on a dinghy. They're coming getting married to a British citizen, and they want to make the UK their home, and it's their right to live with their spouse. We're going to force UK people to say, well, sorry, you can't afford that much, or if you're earning 37,000, then you have to move abroad in order to have your family life. It's just not fair. I mean, reduce the other means, the dependents going, that's fine, and all the other work permit limits going up, that's fine, because that's where people were coming in. And it's right. And how does a British citizen feel knowing a Ukrainian can come in and, get all the help, 200,000 of them, and yet their spouse can't, and they have to earn 38,700. Yet the Ukrainians
I guess
come here for free.
The government is also concerned about abuse of the system as well. We have seen cases of people bringing people over from other countries who aren't really their spouse necessarily, but I can see how it would seem horribly unfair if you did meet the love of your life who happened to be in, I don't know, let's say France, for example, and you don't quite meet that income threshold.
Would you believe it or not, Thailand? But the other thing is these applications are only 65,000 in total. So they don't even make up 10% of the net migration figures or anything like this. So it's not the ones that to target compared to the Ukrainians and the people from Hong Kong who actually boosted this year's figures. I mean, it's not fair to target your own citizens.
Isn't it fascinating? Now we have control over migration. Now that it's a domestic policy decision, we're finding out all of these different elements of the system and perhaps looking at one amorphous number and just saying, this is the migration number. And we don't look at, well, how many people are going to go back after 2 years? How many people are students? How many people are actually marrying Brits? I mean, all of these different, perhaps we should break this number down and compartmentalise it.
Yes, but
rather than view it as one big thing.
The context, though, is huge amounts of pressure on our infrastructure, and we must remember that's why the government wants to bring these numbers down. Thank you very much indeed, Harjap Singh Banghal, immigration lawyer.